Good afternoon. The time is 5:31 on May 17th, 2017, and the public meeting of the District of Columbia State Board of Education is now called to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Mr. Haywood, please call the roll.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Jacobson.
Present.
Ms. Carter.
Present.
Ms. Wilson-Phelan.
Present.
Ms. Wattenberg.
Present.
Dr. Woodruff.
Present.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones. Mr. Whedon.
Present.
Mr. Batchelor.
Present.
Ms. Hall. Ms. Hall. Mr. DeRosen. Mr. DeRosen. Madam President, you have a quorum.
A quorum has been determined, and the State Board will proceed now with the business portion of the meeting. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there any corrections or additions? And I'd like to add a correction, if possible, to move item 10, which is the science assessment, up to item 6, because the superintendent isn't here today. Are there any objections? So moved. Thank you. Seeing no changes, I would like to I would like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? The motion has been properly moved and seconded. I will ask all in favor say yay.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion has been approved. Members, we have minutes from our April 5th and May 3rd working sessions before us. Are there corrections or additions to the April 5th or May 3rd minutes? Seeing no changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been properly moved and seconded. I will ask for all those in favor.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion has been approved. Good evening. My name is Karen Williams, Ward 7 Representative and President of the State Board of Education. On behalf of the members of the District of Columbia State Board of Education, I would like to welcome our guests and our viewing public to our Wednesday, May 17th public meeting. The State Board typically meets on the third Wednesday of every month in the Old Council Chambers at 414 4th Street Northwest. Tonight, the State Board will consider a resolution that will establish a new task force to advise the State Board as it continues its public engagement related to Every Student Succeeds Act. The State Board is committed to involving residents in policy decision-making, and this task force will help us to do that more efficiently. In the week since the State Board approved the ESSA Accountability Plan, we have begun to prepare for our next task, school report cards. School report cards are designed to provide a full and complete story of each school. Our goal is to centralize information into a single place so that parents can learn everything they need to know without going through multiple websites. In the coming months, we will be holding meetings with parents, students, teachers, and other community members to provide them with information about what is required to be in the report card and to learn what information they want to see. I encourage you to sign up for the SBOE's press releases and newsletter, as well as visiting our website in order to stay up to date on that process. Before we move to our ESSA task force resolution, I want to publicly welcome the newest member of the State Board team, Maria Salsa-Coley. Maria, who has joined us recently as a policy analyst. Maria, we are very glad to have you with us. I also want to recognize the Chief Staff of OSSE, Shauna Young, sitting beside me, who is sitting in for our State Superintendent of Education, Hansel Kang. Ms. Young will be presenting on the DC Science Assessment later in the meeting. The State Board welcomes public participation in activities under our authority. At every public meeting, we begin with testimony from public witnesses on education-related matters. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak at a future public meeting, please contact our staff at SBOE@dc.gov or by calling 202-741-0888. One moment. Tonight, Marilyn Holmes from Total Sunshine, Inc. has joined us. Please come down, Ms. Holmes, and take the table. You have 3 minutes to speak this evening. I'm not going to tell you about the microphone. I'm sure you. Thank you, Ms. Holmes.
All righty. Good evening once again here at the school board public meeting, and I'm so happy to be able to do so. My name is Marilyn Holmes. I'm the president and founder of Total Sunshine, Inc. We're a local nonprofit, 501c3. We've been working with the young people in the city for the last 17 years. Not only is Total Sunshine a nonprofit, we're also a television show. We broadcast our charitable activities, and we've done so for the last 17 years. Now, my main purpose for coming out here tonight is to talk about our 9th annual school grade rewards ceremony. It's June 22nd. It's coming up. Here's a picture of one of the group pictures of our valedictorians and salutatorians. Oh my goodness, they're fantastic young people. Every year when I meet these young people that made straight A's for the last 4 years and had great attendance and did all the right things, I'm really excited. And this year is no different. June 22nd at the RISE Center, the RISE Demonstration Center. You probably see these flyers floating around everywhere because I'll be out there walking the streets until my feet bleed, passing them out everywhere. Okay, but June 22nd, 2017 at the RISE Demonstration Center. It's 2730 Martin Luther King Avenue, Southeast Washington, D.C. We're going to have D.C.'s valedictorians and salutatorians. We have 62 students this year, and we're thrilled to be able to support them with technological tools for college. Now, this event is our signature event of our school grade incentive program. We've been doing this program and supporting young people with educational tools and great advice and technological tools for quite some time now as well. But as I said, it's our 9th annual event. I'm looking forward to a great event. We are still looking for help to support these young people. You would think that it's super easy when you say you got a valedictorian that pockets just start falling wide open, but it's just not the case. And so if anyone is able to help us to make some connections or interested in supporting or finding out more information about our school grade incentive program, feel free, get in touch with me directly because my ears are really wide open right now for any support for our valedictorians and salutatorians. Now this event is a citywide event. We don't discriminate between public school students and charter school students, okay? If you went out there and did the right thing, young people, then you are entitled to this laptop or tablet that Total Sunshine is going to provide for you to make sure that you're ready for college. We can't send these young people out here without the right thing. Now, they have done the hard work, and of course, I've taken it on as my personal duty as Total Sunshine to ensure that they have the right things that they need for college, or at the minimum, a tech tool. Now, some of the young people already have a laptop or a tablet, but you know, a valedictorian should have a backup. Okay, I can't tell you how many times I've dropped my own laptop, and I've been glad to have a backup tablet and things like that. So just with that in mind, I want to invite all of you to come out and give great remarks and advice and congratulations. Bring your clapping hands for the valedictorians and salutatorians. We will be more than happy to see each and every one of you there. People in the public, teachers, administrators, principals, you're all very welcome to come out and applaud our finest students. And when I say finest, I mean finest. I was great in school, but I didn't make straight A's. So that's a task all by itself. Now, people want to get in touch with Total Sunshine, you can feel free to contact us at 202-575-0462. That's the Sunshine line, or go to www.totalsunshine.org and or email me directly at info@totalsunshine.org. I'm always happy to come out and share this information with you all, and I hope to see you on Thursday, June 22nd, 2017, Ward 8. We'll do it. It'll be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes, as always.
Okay.
In January 2014, the State Board approved Next Generation Science Standards for the District of Columbia Public Schools. These K-12 standards are designed around 3 dimensions: science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts. Each of these dimensions plays a part in each standard. A high-quality science education means that students will develop an in-depth understanding of content and develop key skills. communications, collaborations, inquiry, problem solving, and flexibility that will serve them throughout their educational and professional lives. Tonight, Shauna Young, Chief of Staff at OSSE, will be updating the State Board on the DC Science Assessment. DC Science was developed to fulfill the federal requirement for a state science assessment to be administered at least once in grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 8 and 10 through 11. Ms. Young, please begin when you're ready.
Thank you for having me here tonight, and I apologize in advance for the state of my voice. I have a little bit of a cold, which, as I like to say, my son gave me for Mother's Day. So tonight we'd like to just give a little bit of an overview of the content and next steps for the science assessment, and just as a preview for some upcoming votes at the State Board. As many of you know, the Next Generation Science Standards are a new set of K-12 science standards, which help us understand what students and children should be to know and be able to do in science, and they were developed by states. So these identify practices, concepts, and core ideas that students should master, not just content that they should memorize in order to prepare for success, aligned with the Common Core standards in English and math. And they help to prepare students for college and careers using those aligned 3 sets of ideas. There are specific innovations that the Next Generation Science Standard highlights, which are meant to address how students actually learn science and also set the groundwork for our science education in the district. And so it emphasizes the dimensions of science and how they're connected to one another. It incorporates engineering specifically and the nature of science as practices or as concepts overall instead of just a specific content area. They allow us to measure student performance itself in science. And science and engineering concepts build progression over time in a student's career in K through 12. And then also have specific connections to standards in English language, arts, and math, which help our schools better align their teaching and accomplish more across all classrooms. So to assess these standards, which teachers every day are teaching in the classroom, we administer at the state level a science assessment in grade 5, 8, and in high school biology. And we give this to all students in those grades, and it's administered in 2 units, with each taking approximately 60 minutes, which is a limited amount of time. All assessments measure those dimensionalities we talked about, and you can see here that each assessment covers similar but overlapping core ideas in physical science, life science, earth science, and engineering. To measure the standards, the assessment is designed to use real-world scenarios with multiple items. So students are given a problem and their learning can be assessed in multiple ways. Whew. Going back there one slide, I had to pause for water. When we talk about what those types of items are, selected response, for example, means to select an answer. Constructed means a student is writing their own answer. And then they also have technology enhanced items and items that are designed with multiple components so students can show what they've learned in multiple ways, which is a more modern way of assessing student learning than in the past. So we wanted to share a little bit of the timeline. The science standards were approved several years ago in 2014, and we've field tested and administered the operational assessment over the past couple of years. And we hope to submit science assessment scores to the U.S. Department of Education this summer and hope to release the science assessment scores this fall. In order to do that, OSSE needs to develop and have approved the final performance level descriptors. And those will be coming to the State Board next month, which are the recommended performance levels or sort of like cut scores for the assessment. That recommendation is informed by a complex set of of research and a standard setting process in which DC science educators themselves participated in looking at the scores of the assessments and helping to determine where those scores should be. In addition, we are using external psychometric review as well as a review of experts on the OSSE staff, both in science and in data. And we anticipate that the State Board will review and discuss these performance levels, as we said, next month, and then vote on their approval. Any questions?
Any questions? Well, no further questions. Thank you. You go home and
Karen.
take care of yourself.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to note to the public that we have actually discussed this now. This is the third time with prior meetings where we have had the opportunity to ask questions. So it's not a lack of interest or a commitment to this work. It's just because OSSE has been so helpful in answering all our questions so far. Thanks.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you. Joanna, would you like to come to the front? We're going to do your resolution next. Joanna? You don't have to, okay. Under our bylaws, the Ombudsman for Public Education has exclusive authority over her employees within that office. As the board is aware, employees in her office serve in the accepted service bracket. This service requires that employees be domiciled in the District of Columbia. The Ombudsman has requested a waiver of this position for a new assistant ombudsman. Is there a motion on this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Discussion. Discussion?
Great. I just wanted to point out that this is the second time, from my perspective, that we're taking a look at this vote. We voted against this a little while back when we did not permit blanket authority for the Office of the Ombudsman to allow for any future position to be exempted from the domicile requirement. And I believe, if I recall the comments, both mine and those of my colleagues, and why the measure was defeated, it was because we felt it was important, particularly for that office, for staff to reside in DC, for them to feel a stake in the city, so to speak. I understand that since that vote, there has been legislation that has passed and has been passed also through the congressional review that allows for the ombudsman to have independent authority, and that there is confusion about how that independent authority actually plays out, under what timeline, under what budget, et cetera. And I support and have gone on record multiple times supporting that independent authority on the ombudsman. I do believe that should be an office in our city that is allowed to act and operate with as much independence as possible in order to best serve our children. At the same time, we are asked again to vote on whether we think it is appropriate to allow for an exemption to the domicile authority requirement, something that we had warned against before. Again, this is my recollection of our discussion, that offer letter should not have gone through because we didn't believe that there should have been an exception to the domicile requirement. And now we're seeing that it did go through and that we're being asked to provide the exception again under our authority. And I will say that I am not comfortable providing that authority. And I've spoken with the ombudsman also to understand her perspective and share my perspective, both because I don't agree in principle with the concept of people working in that office not residing in DC, but also because of the principled stance we took before that we shouldn't be moving outside the law except for in very exceptional cases. And those exceptional cases in the past had to do with people who had either been on staff for several years or had already been on staff and hired and were working when this change in HR provision for our offices was put in place. That is not, as I understand it, the case in this particular situation. There was not an accepted offer or a person put in place when we already said that we would not approve this authority. And because of that, I will not support it. It's not because I don't think there should be independent authority. It's not because I want to create challenges for the office at all. It's because I think we took a principled stance. I took that principled stance before, and as an elected official, I'm committed to following that principle unless there is new information provided that would inform me in a different way to change that perspective, and that's not the case tonight. So I wanted to make sure it was very clear why I would be voting against this approval authority. Thank you. I should say this exemption situation.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Jones?
Madam President, is it appropriate? Madam President, is it appropriate to hear from the ombudsman? I respect and almost agree with my colleague from Ward 1 because we did make a decision. However, I want to give her an opportunity to staff her office with what she needs. But I'm a staunch supporter of our workers being district residents. But if there are extenuating circumstances, and if it's appropriate only, prior to the vote, I'd like to hear from the ombudsman, but that's
Thank you for the opportunity. So I think there are a couple things to keep in mind. The first is that when I started, I was appointed as an accepted service employee. But my then staffer, Elizabeth, who some of you remember, was a career service employee. And then we had a number of conversations, some of you are aware of those conversations, some are not maybe, where the state board believed that we had to convert all employees to the accepted service requirement, or employment classification, because of language that said that the state board appoints all employees. So during that time that we were having those conversations, I worked with the council as well as internally to make our office more independent within the State Board of Education, and part of that language was to give my office independent personnel authority as well as independent budget authority. There's some still confusion in my mind, and we've talked about this with the Office of the Attorney General around that language about independent budget authority and independent personnel authority, whether that language is triggered, becomes effective on October 1st when there's the start of the new fiscal year 18, or whether it's effective now. And that is because the overall omnibus bill, which contained this language, became effective on April 7th of this year. And so we currently have an employee who we had, at the time, I believe that the public meeting was, I think, mid to late January. We had already verbally talked with the candidate that we wanted, which is why I requested from the state board at that time for language waiver for both Beryl and for Clarence Parks. At that time, I was told after the public meeting that they did, that as a board, you did not want to give a blanket waiver to the Office of the Ombudsman, which I understood. And so you gave a waiver to Clarence Parks, and then I was told that I could come back and ask for a waiver for Beryl once he came on board, which he came on board in February. But we're already in the process of extending an offer at the time of this public hearing in January, where you extended the waiver to one employee. And so currently where we are now is that we have Beryl, who is working for us. He will be out of compliance, I believe, on August 7th of this year. And so the question becomes, while I have the independent personnel authority definitely on October 1st, the question becomes if it's April 7th or October 1st, and I'm still trying to work through that. But we have someone out of compliance that will really affect the operations of my office. And so I guess the question is, what do I do at this point? Beryl worked with us before as a fellow, which is why he was hired. To be honest, I know it's hard to believe, but there aren't 1,000,001 people trying to work for the Office of the Ombudsman, right? It takes a special skill set and a certain experience, and I think the reason I selected Beryl was because he worked in an office before. We have a really tiny office. It's hard to have someone who can hit the ground running and also have the demonstrated interest in the work. And I know this because when I recruited for Beryl just months before, we had 300 plus resumes, and very few people, including DC residents, were qualified. And so I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but just to give that background.
Quick question, what prohibits Beryl from moving into the district?
I think he would better be able to answer that, if that's okay, to add him to the panel. But he said it would present a hardship for him. And what I would say, just to your question, is that it is my position, and I've had this position for some time, that our employees, the Office of the Ombudsman, should never have been converted is not the right word because they were hired after the conversations around accepted service versus career service, but I believe my employees should not have to be accepted service employees at all because they are not subject to the appointing authority of the state board, but we're still working through, like I said, when that language is actually in effect, whether it's October or now, and in April when the law became effective.
Mr. Jacobson?
Are you aware of what the unemployment rate is in Virginia?
I'm not.
It's 4.1%. How about Maryland?
Again, I'm not aware.
4.2%. But it's 5.8% unemployment in DC. Was there an open process to allow DC residents an opportunity to apply for this position?
My understanding, and I also rely on John Paul to address this too, is that for accepted service employees, you don't have to have an open process. So I had a very open process for Clarence Parks, where I spent a number of months, and I'm not an HR person, right? So I spent a lot of time looking through hundreds of resumes, screening them, inviting a select number, I think between 18 and 20 candidates for phone interviews, and did that on my vacation. And then, brought in a smaller set of people for a panel interview with some colleagues of mine to interview a number of employees. And a number of prospective candidates. A couple of them were DC residents, but Clarence, given his background, in terms of special education, working for PCSB, OSSI, and DCPS over the years, was the best candidate for the role. So I have had a really hard time finding, even with your information, and thank you, finding DC residents that I felt like were qualified for the work that we do. And at that time, Clarence Parks was someone, while he is not a DC resident currently, was from Ward 7, grew up in the city, and really understood the city and the families that we serve.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Jones?
I just want to point out just two other quick comments. Number one, if you had actually opened it up for competition, you would have benefited from a tremendous pool of highly qualified candidates from the departure of the Obama administration in the city. And number two, what I'm hearing you say is that you want the accepted service benefits of no competition, but are not willing to put up with the costs of that, which means you have to be a DC resident. And to me, that is exactly what we are trying to avoid in this city. And so for that reason, I just can't, with a clear conscience, support that.
Right. If I could respond, I would say that it's not that I want to take the benefits. What I would say is we are really a really small office. And so when I realized I didn't have to spend 3 months looking for a candidate when I already had a really well-qualified candidate already, that was the approach I took. But I do believe, like I said earlier, that the accepted service employment classification is not the appropriate classification for the Office of the Ombudsman, which is why I've worked to have the law changed.
One very quick comment, and this goes towards my thoughts on this position and many government positions. The board, when we talked about this previously, and I completely agree that we want to make sure that our employees, and especially in this position, are living in the city because we believe that our district employees will have a bigger stake in what's best for our citizens and our residents, and especially our children. And while I don't want to make any undue hardship on Beryl or any other employee, and that is one of the main reasons why I will be voting the way I am this evening. Again, part of our duty as a board is not just to make sure that we are looking over policy for our students, but also making sure that our students, once they graduate and become citizens of the city, maybe go on to college, that they come back and then are part of our city, making our city better as a whole, as adults. And Beryl, again, I don't want to make any undue hardships for him, but without hearing from him why it would be such an undue hardship, especially as he was a Ward 7 resident and grew up in the district, I find it hard that he would have a problem moving back into the city.
It's a different employee. Speaking of Clarence Parks, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you won't know until August. I'm sorry, that the expiration or the date, the important date is August, and we're in May. So I think we could push it another month or two and see what kind of information we actually get as you work this through with the city agencies, correct? I mean, you're not yet at that moment.
That's correct. We're not yet at that moment. We wanted to give Beryl the, I don't know what the right word is, but that he would know whether he was moving into the district or not, and not wait until like, I don't know, right before the end of the expiration of the 6 months, which would be over the summer. So yes, I could wait a couple of months. But if in fact he cannot move into the district, then I am left with the 7-week gap. And so I'm not sure what to do at that point, and I will also say that at the last, in the January State Board public meeting, like I said earlier, we were very close to extending the offer. I think we were a week off. We had already talked to Beryl, interviewed him, thought about other candidates. I had gone back to the resumes I had before, and so we extended the offer on January 25th, right? And so it's not that I heard what the board said and then said, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. It was, we were already very close to the offer stage, within days of the offer stage.
I have a question.
I have a question first. And
Okay, thank you.
You said that once you got a reading or ruling from the Attorney General, this issue will be solved. Do you feel that way?
So what I would say is that, and I wish I had the statute right in front of me, but what I would say is that the language where it provides the Office of the Ombudsman with personnel, independent personnel authority and budget authority, I believe is in the same sentence, right? And so the question for me becomes, like I said, you know, it makes sense to me that the independent budget authority would start on FY18, which is October 1st. It's not clear to me, even though we've talked to the OAG a number of times, that why the independent personnel authority would be required to start on October 1.
So you're saying that there is no way to resolve this?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we haven't yet resolved it.
So I'm asking a question. If the Attorney General is looking at this as we speak, okay, and said that within the next week or so he would have a determination, he would get back to us with his interpretation of what the bill says or how it should be implemented, will you agree with that implementation?
Yes, I mean, if the Attorney General, the Office of the Attorney General renders an opinion, we have not asked for that official opinion. We've done it over the phone. We've asked for different opinions, getting close to we're talking about the conversion issue. There are a lot of related issues that we worked through first. Right. But I will, in fact, ask for an official opinion on this specific.
Asked for an official opinion.
Right.
I will. Have asked.
Oh, you have?
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I just asked for official opinion today.
Okay.
I gave him the markup and the bill as it now stands.
Okay.
And asked for an official interpretation, including the HR part of the bill.
Oh, that's helpful. I didn't realize that. I
Okay.
apologize.
So I was told that in the next 2 weeks or so, they would have, well, actually by next week, but you know. So can we postpone this for the next 2 weeks?
Sure, that's fine. I didn't realize that, so that's helpful. Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes.
if it's appropriate, I would move that we postpone this to the next, vote to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay.
All
Thank
in
you very
favor?
much. I appreciate it.
Aye.
All opposed?
Can't vote for it today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. As the only independently elected government agency with a sole focus on education, the State Board has a unique, if limited, role in the District of Columbia. Our approval is required for a number of statewide matters, and we provide our advice to the mayor and the state superintendent on issues our constituents are facing. In order to be successful, however, the State Board must work hard to expand and deepen its pathways into communities, to truly listen to our students, parents, and teachers, and make the system better. Tonight, we will consider a resolution that I believe will help us do that. Mr. Hayworth, would you read the resolution, please?
State Board of Education, hold on, let me State Board of Education resolution to approve the creation of ESSA Task Force, SR 17 and the number will actually be 7. Whereas in December 2015, Congress enacted the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, which amended the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, ESEA, and built on key areas of educational progress achieved in recent years with the intention of ensuring that all students have equitable access to a high-quality education. Whereas the DC State Board of Education advises the Office of the State Superintendent on statewide education policy in the District of Columbia. Whereas on March 22, 2017, the SBOE approved the district's state accountability plan as proposed by the state superintendent. And whereas the DC State Board of Education commits itself to continue the ESSA development and implementation process in a manner that will involve historically marginalized communities. Now therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education amends State Board Resolution 17 to appoint committees to abolish the ESSA Accountability Plan Committee and replace it with a State Board of Education ESSA Task Force that will enhance the involvement and engagement of the community in the development of State Board policy in relation to the Every Student Succeeds Act. And be it further resolved that the State Board ESSA Task Force will report to the State Board during working sessions on the implementation of the ESSA State Plan, design and content of the school report cards, will review pilot projects on behalf of the State Board and make recommendations to the State Board on additional measures to be included in plan revisions. In addition, State Board members will conduct community roundtables and focus groups to continue to gather input on the plan and its measures. The task force shall be chaired by Lynette Woodruff, the Ward 4 representative, consist of 2 parent representatives, 2 student representatives, 2 teacher representatives, 2 ward education group representatives, 2 district business representatives, 2 community education advocates, 2 national education experts, the District of Columbia Public Schools chancellor or his designee, 1 District of Columbia Public Charter School Board designee, an OSSE designee, the State Board president or designee, 1 State Board representative to be appointed by the State Board president, and such additional non-voting members as deemed beneficial by the task force chair.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to yield to my colleague from Ward 5.
Thank you.
Ms.
Madam President, I support this resolution. However, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to the author of the resolution. I believe that's Jack Jacobson, and the proposed chair, our colleague from Ward 4, Ms. Woodruff, to amend the number of board members that would participate on the committee. And that starts at the last, I believe the last sentence, starting at 34, ending at 40. But the area specifically I'm speaking of is at 38, where it says State Board President or designee, which is fine. But I'd like to change the one SBOE representative to 3. And that would make a total of 4 board members that would serve, giving us a broad, I'm sorry.
It's 3 plus president plus chair, that would be 5 representatives. So the chair, the president, and 3 additional representatives would be 5 members.
Okay, I just want to see 4 board members. So, I mean, the chair can designate another person if she so desires. But I think it would support the public and our constituents that would give us a diverse body of our board members that represent different parts of this city.
So are we not going to the other person? So there are already 4 people, so we agree?
No, there's 2.
Currently,
And I'm asking for, instead of having 1, that would be 2.
I'd
what?
like to hear from the committee chair, the proposed committee chair.
Yes, I'm in agreement with that. I think that is consistent with our bylaws, that we can have as many as 4 so that we do not have a quorum. So I can see where changing that 1 to a 2 would be appropriate.
Therefore, I would accept that amendment as friendly.
Any other discussion?
Madam President,
Mr. Bachelor?
I'd like to also offer a friendly amendment on line 29 between the words sessions and on. I would like to insert comma and at least once quarterly during the state board's public meetings. So that line would read, be it further resolved that the state board ESSA task force will report to the state board during working sessions and at least once quarterly during the state board's public meetings on the implementation, et cetera, et cetera. So moved.
And if there is no objection from the proposed committee chair, I would accept that as friendly.
No objection.
Madam President.
Can you just explain why? Because our working group meetings are also public and available on video.
Yeah, just really to give opportunity to those folks who may also be watching the public meetings on television to get those updates as well. And folks are typically more, if they do watch us, are more likely to watch us during our monthly public meetings.
Any other?
Oh, yeah, Madam President, I'm sorry. I have one more amendment to propose on line 39. I would like to strike the phrase appointed by the state board president and in its place insert elected by majority vote of the state board, so that that line in part would read state board president or designee, now with the amendment, 2 SBOE representatives to be elected by majority vote of the state board, and I move that amendment.
Discussion?
Question, if it's elected by the majority of the board, does that have to take place only during a public board meeting, or can it take place during a working session?
So as a matter of our bylaws, it would need to happen at a public meeting after discussion at a working session.
Parliamentary inquiry. Do amendments that are moved require a second?
They do. Yes, amendments do require seconds.
The motion has not been seconded.
Second.
Call the question.
Do you not accept that as friendly, Jack?
I do not. I don't want to delay another month our work on getting this task force moving. We need to strike while the iron is hot, and to delay when I think we could come to a very easy agreement among ourselves and just grant the president the power to appoint so we can move forward immediately is my preference. I don't think our children deserve to wait another month.
Point of inquiry. Would delaying the appointment of 2 members impact the ability of the chair to start moving forward with forming the committee? They can still, any member can still attend. Those 2 seats would just be open for a month.
I'm not sure who you're asking. If you're asking me or, I believe that the committee chair could proceed with conjunctions with the SBOE president, as those are listed specifically. But you're correct, then the representatives, the other SBOE representatives would not be able to participate in those discussions until after that.
Quick question on Marcus's second amendment in regards to the election. May I ask your opinion on why elected among our board members as opposed to appointed?
Yeah, well, I think in a matter as important as this, and essentially with those members who are appointed to those task force representing our voice in this very important discussion, I thought that it should be very clear that the members of our board have come to an agreement on who should represent our total voice on these issues. And so instead of a singular appointment, I thought it more appropriate for members of this body, as we do on most matters, to decide collectively.
So the vote is on Mr. Batchelor's amendment to add language in line 39 where the the 2 SBOE representatives would be selected by election of the majority of the SBOE. Ms. Williams? No. Mr. Jacobson? Nay. Ms. Carter?
Nay.
Ms. Wilson-Phelan?
Nay.
Ms. Wattenberg?
Yay.
Dr. Woodruff?
Nay.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Whedon?
Yes.
Mr. Batchelor?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Ms. Hall? Mr. DeRosen? Mr. DeRosen? Madam President, the motion fails.
Excuse me, I have a broken microphone. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a discussion on the original amendment. We're on the original motion, I guess. Is that where we're at? So I just wanted to say I'm going to be supporting this, and I am supportive of it. I'm very supportive of setting up this task force. I think it's a great way to reach out and continue the conversation that was started earlier. I do want to say I had wished that we would allow on this committee as many members of the State Board of Ed who as wanted to participate. That is how we did our previous task force on competency-based education. It's how we ran the ESSA committee. It's how we've run all of our issues committees. And I think it's very healthy. We're elected to the State Board of Ed to represent our constituents, and if the work of around these important issues is going to be done on these task force or committees, it makes sense to me that members ought to be choosing to represent their constituents and the students and families of DC on those committees. So I'm sorry that we're breaking precedent on it. As a compromise, though, I will support it, and I'm very hopeful that it will be a very successful task force, building on the work that we've already done. It's a terrifically important issue.
Thank you, Ms. Wattenberg. Now we vote on the motion.
I have a final comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I'd like to close the comments unless others have. Okay. I would just say the feedback that we received when we participated in our ESSA outreach was that there was a hunger among our constituents and among education advocates, parents, teachers, et cetera, to have a voice. The more board members that are part of this committee, the more diminished the voices are of those outside groups that we need to hear from. So I'm appreciate the sentiments of my colleagues, and I appreciate that they're voting for it. With that, I'd like to move forward together with hopefully a unanimous vote for this important issue.
The vote is on SR 17-7. It's on the creation of the ESSA task force. Ms. Williams?
Yeah.
Mr. Jacobson? Aye. Ms. Carter? Ms. Wilson-Phelan?
Yes.
Ms. Weltenberg?
Yes.
Dr. Woodruff?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Whedon?
Yes.
Mr. Batchelor?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Ms. Hall? Mr. Drosen? Mr. Drosen? Madam President, the motion carries.
With this vote, I'd like to call the meeting,
Madam Chair. We have a statement before we close.
go ahead.
Just real quickly, I want to offer a public congratulations to the principals who I know are leaving our Ward 6 and our citywide schools. Pete Young at Brent and Ismar Vargas at Elliott Hine. Just thank you for your service. And thanks to the City Council and the education advocates who have fought so hard for a per student increase. I know those funds will be used well to serve our students in both public and public charter sectors. So thank you for all your work.
And I would like to thank Congressman Member Grasso of the Education Committee for quote unquote fully funding our budget requests. With no further business before the board, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, and this public meeting of the District of Columbia State Board of Education is formally adjourned at 6:23.